You're falling, not in the fuzzy, half-convincing way that most dreams work, not with that slightly off quality where some part of you knows nothing adds up. In the specific, physical, this is genuinely happening way, the kind that fires every muscle in your body at once, the kind that cracks your eyes open and sends your heart into something completely unreasonable at whatever time it is, and then leaves you lying there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what just happened. Because whatever that was, it felt more real than most things that are actually real. Here's what nobody tells you. There's a precise, scientific answer for why, and it goes deeper than you probably expect. Neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and one of the strangest quirks in how the human brain constructs what you call reality. Let's go through it. Start with what actually happens in the body. The event that produces the falling sensation at the edge of sleep is called a hypnic jerk, a sudden, involuntary muscular contraction that happens at the threshold between wakefulness and sleep. It is classified as a myoclonic event, unintentional rapid muscle activation triggered not by anything external, but by the brain's own transition process. And it is almost universal. Across every culture, every demographic, every population, sleep researchers have studied. The overwhelming majority of humans report experiencing this, which immediately tells you something important. This is not a glitch. This was a feature. Once. To understand why it happens, you have to understand what sleep onset actually is. It is not a switch. It is not a clean line you cross. It is a gradient. Different brain systems downregulate at different rates. Conscious monitoring fades. The motor system, the network responsible for maintaining muscle tone, postural control, the constant background tension that keeps your body positioned and ready, begins to release. Usually this is smooth, invisible. You don't notice your muscles letting go any more than you notice your breathing change. But sometimes the transition is not smooth. In the early stages of sleep onset, the brain sits in an ambiguous state. Some systems already moving towards sleep, others still running near waking levels. In this unstable window, the motor system can misfire. A sudden involuntary discharge, a full-body jerk completely outside your control. The falling sensation that comes with it, that is not a separate event. That is the event, seen from the inside. Here's what's happening. As your muscles relax, the proprioceptive system, which tracks muscle tension and body position, sends a signal to the brain. The vestibular system, which monitors spatial orientation, sends a signal. Together, these signals resemble what the brain would receive if the body were actually losing support, if you were actually falling. The brain does what it always does with incoming signals. It builds an experience around them. It constructs the most coherent narrative that fits the input. Muscle tone dropping suddenly, vestibular disturbance, loss of positional stability, narrative output, falling. The jerk that follows is the motor system responding to that narrative, a reflexive attempt to catch a body that the brain believes has lost its footing, a protective response to a danger that doesn't exist. Now, why does it feel so real? Most dreams don't feel like this. Most dreams have a looseness, a slightly wrong physics, characters that shift identity, environments that couldn't survive inspection. The falling experience feels nothing like that. It feels immediate, embodied, happening to a body, not constructed by a mind. And the reason is this. The falling sensation is built from real sensory input. This is the key distinction. Most dream content is pure confabulation, the brain generating imagery and sensation from memory and imagination, with no connection to what the body is currently doing. The brain is making it up. The hypnic jerk is different. The proprioceptive and vestibular signals that trigger it are genuine, real muscles, actually relaxing. Real vestibular changes from an actual physical process. The brain is not inventing input. It is misinterpreting input that is truly there. The experience feels real because, in a specific and meaningful sense, it is. The signals are real. The narrative built around them is wrong, but it's built on a real foundation. That is why it hits different. That is why your body responds as if it happened. But here's where it gets stranger, because the hypnic jerk is only half the story. Some people fall in their sleep and never jerk awake at all. They just keep falling. Longer, deeper, with more detail, more fear, more absolute certainty that this is the end, until something finally pulls them out and they wake gasping, heart going, completely unable to explain why their body is reacting like they just survived something. These are falling dreams during REM sleep, and their mechanism is completely different, and in some ways more unsettling. During REM sleep, the brain is extraordinarily active, more active in some measures than during full wakefulness. It is generating complex spatial environments, running emotional simulations, constructing full narrative experiences at high speed. But the body is not moving at all. There is a specific mechanism called REM Atonia. The brain actively paralyzes voluntary muscles during REM sleep. This exists to prevent you from physically acting out what you are dreaming. Your brain is sprinting. Your body is completely frozen. This combination creates a problem for the vestibular system. In waking life, the vestibular system receives constant confirmation from the body's actual movements. It knows where you are in space because the body keeps telling it. During REM, the body goes silent, but the brain is running rich, active, spatially complex experience. The mismatch produces disturbance, sensations of unexpected movement, spatial disorientation, a sudden conviction that your position in space has shifted without warning. The dreaming brain receives this signal and does what it always does. It builds a narrative around it. And the narrative that vestibular disturbance most naturally produces is the one your brain has the most waking experience with: falling. If the dream was set in a building, you fall from it. If you were flying, you lose altitude. If there was no context at all, the context arrives instantly. An edge, a ledge, a sudden absence of ground beneath you. The brain fills in everything: the setting, the cause, the sensation of air, the absolute certainty of what comes next. And then the amygdala gets involved. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is hyperactive during REM sleep, more active than during most waking states. And falling is one of the most fundamental threat signals the human nervous system recognizes: complete loss of control, uncontrolled descent, inevitable impact. The amygdala does not evaluate whether this is a dream. It processes the falling narrative as a live threat and responds accordingly. Adrenaline releases, heart rate climbs, breathing changes. And here is where the loop closes in a way that is genuinely difficult to escape. Those physiological responses, the racing heart, the adrenaline, the changed breathing, become sensory inputs that the brain folds back into the dream. The heart accelerating is evidence that something alarming is happening. The adrenaline sharpens everything, makes the experience feel more immediate, more real. The body reacting to the dream becomes confirmation that the dream warrants that reaction. The falling dream intensifies itself as it proceeds. Each response creates more evidence. More evidence creates more response. This is why you always wake before impact, not because the brain protects you from the conclusion, but because the dream's own emotional escalation generates enough physiological arousal to eventually break the sleep state entirely. You don't wake up because the fall ended. You wake up because the fall became too real to sleep through. Now let's talk about why this happens more to some people. And this is where it gets personal. Think about yesterday. Did you have coffee after noon? Did you work out late? Did you lie in bed with your mind still running through everything that hasn't been resolved? Caffeine is the most direct and least understood contributor. It works by blocking adenosine, the molecule that builds sleep pressure throughout the day. When caffeine is still active at sleep onset, your brain is trying to transition while part of its arousal system is being chemically held open. The transition becomes a conflict, one system pushing towards sleep, another one chemically refusing. That conflict produces irregular, abrupt shifts at sleep onset. More motor discharge, more hypnic jerks, more falling. A coffee at 2 p.m. still has meaningful caffeine concentration in your bloodstream at 10 p.m. Most people have no idea. Physical exhaustion feels like it should help. It doesn't always. When the body is extremely tired, the systems maintaining wakefulness collapse simultaneously instead of stepping down in sequence. The transition is not gradual, it is a sudden drop. The proprioceptive shift is abrupt. The monitoring system reads a hard signal and fires hard. The nights you fall asleep the instant your head hits the pillow are often the same nights you jerk awake the hardest 30 seconds later. Stress is the quietest contributor and the most consistent one. A nervous system running elevated, cortisol up, vigilance up, the low-level threat monitoring that stress keeps permanently active, raises the baseline that sleep onset has to overcome. The transition is harder. The ambiguous middle state stretches longer. More time in the window where the motor system can misfire. The person lying awake at midnight with a mind that won't stop is also the person most likely to fall violently the moment sleep finally arrives. Now, the part that actually matters. The falling dream is not just a neurological curiosity. It is a window into something the brain does constantly, something you never get to observe directly because it is too seamless, too automatic, too invisible to notice from inside it. Conscious experience, what it feels like to be you right now, is not a live recording of external reality. It is a construction. The brain takes sensory input, runs it through interpretive systems built from memory and expectation and pattern, and delivers an output that feels like direct perception of the world. You are not experiencing reality. You are experiencing the brain's model of reality. Most of the time, the model is accurate enough that this distinction is invisible. But the falling dream is one of the rare moments when the seams show, when the model clearly diverges from what is actually happening, and you only notice after the model collapses and the ceiling appears. The brain built an experience of falling from signals that were real but misread. The construction was wrong, but it felt real in exactly the way everything else the brain has ever generated feels real. Because felt reality is the only output the construction process knows how to produce. The brain cannot make you feel something as fake. That is not a failure mode it has. The falling was as real as anything you have ever experienced. Because the system that made it is the same system that makes everything. The ceiling you stare at after you wake is the model correcting itself, reality reasserting. But during the fall, while the vestibular system was firing, while the amygdala was reading genuine threat, while adrenaline was moving through a body that was lying completely still, your brain was doing exactly what it always does, building the most coherent experience it could from the signals it had. The caffeine helped, the stress helped, the ancient tree-sleeping circuitry your nervous system inherited from ancestors who needed it to survive elevated sleeping. That helped most of all. It caught you from a height that no longer exists. It doesn't know you're safe. It only knows how to catch you.